What's up, guys? Welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. This is actually just going to be a retake of a particular tutorial I did quite long ago, 6 months ago. And the one I'm talking about, this one called part 27, Climb to Ledge, lots of trial and error. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I got some questions to this, and frankly, when I reviewed the video myself, I could not figure out what I was doing. So I thought it was a good idea maybe to try and redo this. And also the fact that this is almost 1 hour long, I wanted to see if I could make this a little bit more simple. So let's get started. And to begin with, I'm going to do everything all the way from the beginning together with you guys. So I didn't do anything beforehand except download these characters here, but I'm going to show you what to do. So first of all, you're going to find your character. I'm going to use the one I've been using throughout all these series, the Action Girl character here. So queue this for download, and you want to select first the FBX. Doesn't matter which one really, you just take first. But download the FBX, this one. And then you want to go back and also make a download of the same character for Unreal and queue that. So as mentioned, I already did this off video, so we don't have to wait for that to download. And also one other thing, instead of using Maya in this video, I'm going to be using MotionBuilder as an alternative, since I think it's a good thing to show different approaches really. So inside MotionBuilder, I use 2016. You can get that as a student version if you are studying. And what you want to start out with here is to open up your Mixamo version. And by Mixamo, I mean the version which is not Unreal, the Unreal version. Inside my Action Girl new folder, I created a folder with the UI version, which I unpacked here. With the FBX, you should have something similar. So let's back that out. And you should have a Mixamo version, which looks like this. So I'm just going to delete this because, yeah, that was the test. Anyway, so you will have something looking similar to this, I believe. So just a normal FBX. And if you wonder why I have an animations folder in here, that's because I'm going to get to that in a moment. But I also downloaded the braced hang to crouch animation. But we're going to get to that in a moment. So open up your Mixamo character here. And that's going to bring her in like this. So first of all, we're not going to be using this model here for this skeleton. So I'm going to start off by selecting the body and the top and selecting branches for everything. And then hit delete. And just say yes to all. There we go. So we were left only with this skeleton here, and that's the one we want to define a skeleton for. So you want to select the hips, or just any bone really. It just requires you to select one bone at least. So define. And from here on, it's just a matter of going through and defining these joints. So double click here, double click here, double click, and double click. So it's basically the same as we do when we retarget something. And we're going to have to do this 2 times, but the upside about, or the good side about this is that you just have to do it 1 time, and then you can reuse this setup for any of your characters, any of your characters from Mixamo or any of your animations. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl T to go to the top view and zoom in on the hand. And you will notice she has 1, 2, 3, 4 joints. And the UE4 skeleton only have 3 bones for the hands. So I'm not going to bother about the the final joint here. But if you want to, in case you're making some kind of weird creature and maybe don't want to use the UE4 skeleton, then you obviously want to map up the last joint as well. So let me just actually do this. So double click this one and take the last joint, double click this one, the last joint. And the cool thing is it's also mapping up on the right hand as we do this. So you want to obviously be sure that you pick the right hand when you do this, otherwise the hands are going to be switched. Okay, so that was the hands. So press Ctrl F to go to the front view and go back again here. Actually, we forgot the neck. So go to the neck view and select the neck joint, this one, and go to the head and select the head joint. So now we're ready to go to the legs. So map up the leg and the calf. And all we need now is just the foot and the left toe base. Notice how I pick it from this side here, which is the left toe base, but here it switches around. Just need to be aware of that. And we're missing the reference bone, but since the Mixamo character does not have a reference bone, we don't need to do anything about that. So since I like to keep things nice and tidy, I'm gonna do a few things also, since I'm gonna be using this as a template for reuse. So I'm just gonna go down to takes and delete this take here because I don't need a take. And also this character here, under characters, we have that popped up when we created the skeleton. I want to rename this, so right click and rename this to Mixamo character. And that's what we need to do here. So we just lock this character to a biped, and that's going to create this characterization. So if we double click here, we can see it's now characterized. So that's all we need with the Mixamo skeleton. So now we're ready to import merge in, it's called, the UE4 skeleton. So the UE4 skeleton we downloaded, or UE4 version of your Mixamo character, is found here. And that's loading up here. So we can immediately see here, if we switch to the orthographic view or the perspective view, that we can recognize the FK joints here, and yeah, well, I do that anyway. So what did we get in here? Inside our scene, we can see now we have body and top. So that's all this stuff here. So you want to select from the body to the top. So you have the hips, that's from the Mixamo, and you have the root, which is from the UE4 we just imported. But since we don't want to look at this right now, I'm going to create a group by right-clicking and say group, and then go to groups over here and hide it. So also rename this to be called the UE4 mesh, like this. Okay, so now we need to do the same for this skeleton as well. But since we have two skeletons actually on top of each other, we can see that if we zoom in really close here, we can see we have two joints here. And that's going to be really a pain in the ass to select them. So I'm going to select the hip joint for the Mixamo here and select branches. It's going to select everything underneath. That's a bit peculiar, but that's the way MotionBuilder works. You need to select branches to get everything selected. And then we do something similar, just create a group and call this group the Mixamo. So this is basically just to keep things nice and clean. All right. So now we have this left, and everything can just be turned on and off as we wish. So in order to create the second characterization, we switch up from the Mixamo character to none. That's going to bring us this. So if I click skeleton, it says a valid skeleton is required due to wish to define one. Well, I want to make sure to select the root, which is the UE4 skeleton root, and then click skeleton and define. I think that was actually the same, but anyway, you know, usually you need to make sure to pick the right or just one bone here. So we need to do the same here. I'm just going to do this real quick, as fast as I can. And when you do this, you want to be a little bit careful, because what you can see here is actually a bone, or it's actually the relation between two bones going right across the arms here as well. So if you don't pay close attention, you might accidentally click that one instead. So make sure, as you can see, this is called the IK handgun. So once you click your joint or hover your mouse over here, you can see what is this is mapped to. So just be aware of that. It's the same with the hand. So if I click here, it in this case it picked the hand. But since we also have another joint, the IK hand left here, you want to make sure to pick the right one. The IK joints are not used in this context, so for now just ignore them. So switch to the top view. And if you're wondering what the IK joints are for, I recently think because I haven't really so far found a good use for them, but I think recently I found a way to use them, and that's by actually using MotionBuilder along with this, or any other animation software, where you can define that a particular joint should be constrained to something else. For example, the IK joint should be constrained to the hand, or maybe offset a little bit, and in that context you can use it. You can use it, for example, for fixating a hand to a gun, or doing some custom traces or whatever. I'm not going to go too much into detail with that, but I have another video somewhere where I talk a little bit about that. So go search on my channel, should be somewhere, can't remember. Okay, so again here we need to be careful. We select the thigh, and also here we want to be careful, we select the calf. I'm checking out here, and again with the left foot, click here and left foot, and the toe base, left toe base is this one, and the right toe base is this one. So that's everything except the root. So the root is obviously the one in the middle, and as you can see here I actually got the IK hand root, so that's not the one I want. It's just happens to be placed right on top of it. So in order to select that, I'm gonna take the root from my navigator, drag it up. Nope, I am gonna double click it and then select it, and it's gonna say a reference is assigned to blah blah blah. Do you want to change it? Say yes. So now you have this one set up, and you're ready to lock this to a biped. Right. So let's check down here. We have something called Mixamo character, that's the one we did before, and then we have character, which we should rename to UE4 character. There we go. So now we have a setup with one here, and one character here, and one character here. And we can actually turn on the UE mesh now again. Right. So now we're ready to start looking at the way we can combine these two. Let's first of all save this. We want to keep a copy of this, and for this I'm going to call this Mixamo to UE4 MotionBuilder FBX, and we don't want to save this take, just keep that one default. Right, so let's get an animation, and inside my animations I have this the one I'm talking about in the parts 27 is this animation which is loading here while she is crawling up, yeah, so that one I have downloaded here. And you want to one more thing I forgot to mention, you can queue this for download. You want to download it for in FBX, so that means this animation will come in without any root, and that's actually quite important. You can do it differently, but there's a little problem with that. I'm gonna return to this at the end. Okay, so for now, just make sure you always download these in FBX. Okay, so back inside MotionBuilder, you can now go back down here to Motion File Import, and I have the animation downloaded here. So that popped up on the other screen. Make sure to select Merge and Import. So it's going to bring in the animation. So if I play my animation now, nothing happens. And if we turn on the Mixamo skeleton, we can actually see the skeleton is climbing behind. And the reason why she's not moving is because she is currently driven by, I think it's a stance. If we double click the UE4 character, under character settings, we can see the input type is stance. So what we want to, in this situation, is to have her character being driven by the Mixamo character, because the Mixamo character is already moving. So I switch to character, and I switch Mixamo character here, and nothing happens still. But that's because the active tag is not selected, so I just hit that. And now we have the character moving, as you can see. So how do we get the root motion into play here? Because right now the root is just standing still at the bottom here. It's not moving with us at all. So the way we can do this is in a few ways. So one way to do this is to go to the asset browser and dragging in a constraint. So go to the asset browser here, switch to constraints, and select a position constraint. So you want to drag this, just dump it somewhere on the scene, doesn't matter where. And that's going to give you a constraint down here. The constraint object, that's going to be our root. That's the one we want to be moving with our character. So I'm going to set that to drag it from the navigator onto the constraint object like this. And we want this to be constrained to something else. Right now, we could try and constrain it to the animation itself. But what I like to do, because I like to work with, I want to modify the animations a little bit, and I think the control rig is way easier to do it to make the adjustments using the control rig. So what I'm going to do also is go to my UE4 character, under character definition, and then create a control rig and say FK and IK only, and it's going to pop it back into this state. So you might think, what the F? Okay, so in order to get this animation, because the animation is still only being run on the Mixamo character, and just before, when we had it running on the character Mixamo like this, this character, UE4 character, actually doesn't have animation keys on it. And you can verify this by going into the F curves. For example, select just any bone and go to the F curves and checking your translation and rotation, and they're all blank, no keys at all. So the reason why it's moving is because it's being driven by another character. That's what we set up here. Right. So in order to get the animation keys onto this control, this character, we select plot character and we say control rig, and plot on frame, no, not all takes, whatever, frame rate, and on roll, and plot. So now it shows control input control rig and input source control rig. So that's, you can always select one thing here, but when we play back our animation, we can see she's actually moving again. And this time it's actually it's actually been driven by the animation keys itself. So if we switch in here, what the heck? If we, oh yeah, right. If we select the pelvis in this case here and select the F curves, we can see we have animation keys here. So right now she's being driven by these animations from the control rig. And what we want to do with this constraint here is to say the pelvis, that's a good reference point to drive the root. because the pelvis, if we watch the animation in this case, is moving upwards, and we want to have this root joint here be moving according to the pelvis at some offset, obviously, but I'm gonna get to that. So go back to your constraints. You can find it always under constraints, but if you happen to be under your root here, you can also find it under here. It's the same, right? So select your pelvis here and press X on your keyboard and then click out here and then drag into source. That's going to dump the hip effector. This is a hip effector. So dump that onto here and then say, for now, say snap. Okay. So if we play back the animation now, we can see the root is actually following her up into the air. It's not rotating, it's just following the raw translation of her. So from here on, since what's it called? Since you want to probably have a beginning height at this point here, it's fuck off. Sorry. Just need to shut that off like that. Since the root is starting at the ground, it's probably okay. Okay, somebody's really being persistent. I thought I turned it off. That's weird. Anyway, sorry about that. Gonna have to live with that. The root is gonna be following the motion all the way up at the same distance. So as you can see here, the root is actually not ending up as it should, because the root should be ending up at the bottom of the feet. So that's something we need to take a look at before we export this into Unreal. So what you want to do here is to go to your F-curves, and that's, I think, the only way you can do this, really. I did fiddle a lot with the F-curves back in my first video. So what I did here, I have it maybe a little bit fast. I go to Window and open up my F-curves window. I have an F-curve window down here, but it's so small, so I like to make a copy of this. And I have my hip effector selected right now. And we can see it has this movement here. So before I forgot one thing. So yeah, it's the same deal with the root here, is that it does not have any keys. If I turn off, if I select my position constraint and turn it off, we can see that now it's just standing still again. So it's not following any animation. So we need to have this active to follow. And we don't want that really. So what I'm going to do is go to animation here and plot all properties like that. And now I can turn off the constraint. So now we can see it's still following, but now it's all the keys for that position constraint is now baked onto my root. So if I select my root and go to my F-curves translation, we can see I have a nice animation curve here. So from here on, it's actually a little bit similar to what I did in the first video. Go to F-curves. That's what I wanted to do first. Make sure you have the root selected, and in this case it seems like it's the y-axis. Alright, so usually I work with 2 screens, so I'm just gonna be moving a little bit around here. So what you want to do in this case here is to take your y-axis translation and select everything, and then you want to scale it up so it lands right about where the foot is, and you kind of have to eyeball this one unless you want to create a plane, and I can do that real quick. We don't really need it because I already did it now. Under elements, you can drag in a cube like this. Hit the, where is it? This one, scale uniform, and you can take this box here and you can just expand it like really big, something like that, to create some kind of imaginary plane. And then you could move it like this and scale it down so it becomes only 1 unit or something tall. So position it right about there. So that tells you where the feet are when she lands. Okay. So obviously you want your root to be landing at that point. So the plane just helps you to make sure that it ends up at the right place here. Okay. So from here on, we are actually ready to bake this animation onto our skeleton. So we just have to go to the character, the UE4 character, and it's active right now. So I plot the character to my skeleton. Remember these default settings here, and now it turns on inactive. And if I play my animation now, we can see the animation without any control rig at all. You can see the control rig is not active. So from here on, what you just need to do to get this into Unreal Engine is to take your root, select branches, and motion file export. And I'm gonna find a place on my desktop here and call this. Nope, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna keep this nice and put it under my character new. I'm gonna make a new folder for this actually. Nope, I'm not. Anyway, I'm gonna call this exported and save. So that's going to bring up this window, and here you can see I'm working on this take called Mixamo.com.1. So I'm going to deselect all the other takes, and just export this one. And content, selected model only. So the model I have selected is the root here. So export. So there we go. So now we have the animation exported, and we just need to go into Unreal Engine. I have it open somewhere here, and we can create a new third-person example project. There we go. And let's import both the character and the animation. So the character we want to work with is obviously the UE4 version. So okay, here we have all my new folders. Great, thank you. The UE4 version. I'm desperately trying to keep this under a half an hour. Okay, and ignore that. And you also want to import the animation. I put that. Did I just delete that? No. I put it here. Great. So select this time the action girl skeleton. That's the one we just imported. Sorry. And now if we double click the animation here, we can see she's performing this animation here. If we check the root, we can see the root is moving with her. So now she is actually having root motion. And there you have it. I guess the cool thing about this approach is that it's easily expandable to different animations. So for example, you could pick something like this one and just go ahead and download a different animation. So this falling to roll. If you want to experiment with that, you can use this one. But I'm gonna wrap this video up here. So I'm gonna let you guys practice yourself. Anyway, thank you for watching, and hope this was helpful. So be seeing you in the next. Bye bye.